Welcome to the Fit Dads Podcast. Today we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dave Hembrough. Quite an impressive CV you've got, mate. Work with a lot of athletes, Olympic athletes, strong men, do a lot of work with kids, which we're going to delve into today. But we want to pick your brains on quite a few things around sport from a young age right to the elite level. Let's start with you. How did you get into doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, good morning. Nice to see you both and connect with you here. We've all had a long journey, haven't we? Taken us to where we are. For me, it was sport, physical activity, strength training really helped me as a young person, as a young man, trying to sort of figure myself out or make my way through the education system. So, how I got into what I do now was what sport provided me when I was young.
Well,
we look back at ourselves, don't we? And now we're parents too. Think of our kids and the experiences we want them to have in life and how we want to provide for them. And I was doing martial arts, playing rugby, started going to the gym when I was 13, and very much found that space that sport provided something for me, some confidence, some connection, a bit of social outlet. And I think it really sparked a lot of what I do now as a strength and conditioning coach and running a strength-based organisation. It was the first session in the gym with the rugby team at Sheffield Hallam University, 1998. And I had been training for several years and everyone else hadn't. So I rocked up to university as a fresher, went to the gym, and I was 2 or 3 times stronger than everyone. Not on the basis I was particularly strong, it was just that they weren't. And that's the start of my coaching journey, I think. I first of all started coaching my friends that I played rugby with, and then worked at the university gym and went on to all sorts from that point onwards.
Cool. Why education? Why teaching? Why coaching? Why not challenging yourself, I guess, and going as far as you could with your own performance?
Do you know what? It never interests me. I was always interested in helping others. I'm not a competitive person personally. And looking at the times in my life when I've actually been strongest, it's been in a good social environment at a time where I've had other people around me, but it was also that social connection and that sort of social purpose that led me to be in that place, working hard, being fit, strong, shifting some big tin. But if I was in a gym working out for my own purposes, even if I've competed a little bit in weightlifting, nothing significantly, but even times leading up to competitions, I was always more interested in helping those around me, and I don't know, it feels good, doesn't it? Sharing knowledge, helping others.
Yeah, preaching to the choir there.
Resonate with that a lot. What a beautiful philosophy that is. A key word that keeps popping up for you, Dave, is philosophical. I mean, where does that sort of brain come from you? Have you always been quite curious as a kid, as your career's evolved? Have you found yourself thinking differently to people?
It's hard to answer that, and it's hard to know because we only know ourselves as to who we are. I think it's true to be said that I'm probably indoctrinated by the fact I'm in an academic environment, but I wouldn't really class myself as an academic, pracademic, practitioner with some sort of academic influences. But I've always been an observer of the world and looked at things around me and always been sort of interested and considered. Probably that's evolved as I've grown older and sort of somewhat mature and now in middle age. But I've always been a thinker and always sort of looked to the future and had sort of plans and things I wanted to do.
I've never heard the phrase pracademic before, but okay. I'm gonna look for more pracademics in the future, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about evidence-based practice as well, but for me it's practice-based evidence because practice comes first. Before we started recording the podcast, we were talking about, the role of science and supporting coaches to understand what coaches do and help them do it better. But the practice is the original thing, and then people wrap evidence around it. So it's not evidence-based practice, it's practice-based evidence, which helps everything move forwards.
Talk to us about Mettle. What's Mettle? Why did you start it? We had Lee Bell on here the other week who said his kid had attended some sessions and had amazing things to say about the programme. Talk to us about Mettle.
Yeah, for sure. Mettle is a strength training and a weightlifting club. I've got a background in sport performance. I've coached as a strength and conditioning coach at Olympic Games, at Commonwealth Games with world champions in a number of different sports. And I was really fortunate to be quite successful early on in my career. Went to 2012 London Games, 2014 Commonwealth Games. I was one of the first founding members of the UKSCA. And so, the emergence of the internet, the emergence of strength and conditioning, I was right on the sort of cusp of that. A lot less available information, a very different world from what we're in now. And I realised pretty quickly that high performance was great and it's something I enjoyed, but I felt I had a bigger calling, a bigger purpose. Part of being a strength and conditioning coach, you need to learn Olympic weightlifting. It's something that I didn't have much experience with in my 20s, and I realised I had to learn. So I went on the UKSCA courses, I went on the British weightlifting courses, I accredited, I became qualified, I did some lifting myself, I started competing, I was coaching others, so I formed a club. It's called Hallam Barbell Club at the time. And I didn't realise the undertaking of being a head coach of a club and all the responsibilities that come with that. The time that I'd registered with British Weightlifting, I got my certificate through. It was when the Broadfield pub on Aberdale Road, London Road, was as it used to be, not as it is now. And I lived around the corner in Nether Edge. And I got my certificate on the day that I set Hallam Barbell up. And I went to the Broadfield that night. And I thought I was doing something new. And where I was sat on the wall behind me was a picture, the Broadfield Boxing and Barbell Club, 1909 or something like that.
Wow.
And there was these young men, tops off, looking quite muscular, some with moustaches, with the big sort of spherical barbells. And I was like, look at that. And it was the day that I got my cert. I thought I was doing something new. So sure, nothing's new. And so Hallam Barbell went on to evolve into Mettle for a few different reasons, because the programs we delivered became quite broad, more than just a barbell club, serving different audiences, delivering different programs in different ways. And we had what I'd sort of term the coin brand confusion, that people go into our Power Bell program or our Mindfully Strong program or our Enable program, and it didn't all interrelate back to our core brand. And so we rebranded and repositioned our programs to reflect the sort of central offering of strength and fitness for sort of social change. And so that's Mettle now. We've been established for sort of several years with Mettle. We've got a great team. We deliver 3 core programs. We deliver Olympic weightlifting, Strong and Social, and Girl Strong. And there are 3 sort of brands, our pillars, our core programs. And we deliver those to youth and adults. We subsection that down into Mettle Minis, which is like a 6 to 8 year old program. Our juniors, which is sort of 8 to 13. Our youth, 13 to 16. Students, 16 to 23. And then seniors, 23 upwards, with a sort of wraparound of our old age strengtheners of sort of 55 plus. Now, all those programs aren't live at the moment. We call that the Mettle Matrix, of those 3 pillars and those different age groups. And we've only got some sort of squares of the matrix that are lit up at the moment. But the aspiration of the Mettle is to change more lives through strength, delivering more programs to more people in more places, and bringing that matrix fully to life.
I think that is
incredible.
Very
Very well summarised that. I think. Go on.
No, I'm going to say, I'm just to give you full kudos. If you can teach me how to get my level 1 Olympic weightlifting qualification way back in the day, you can teach anyone, Dave. You can teach anyone. And I look back really fondly on that, because that was my first sort of CPD course post level 3 trainer.
Tell me more about your experiences. What do you remember? How was it? What stands out?
I remember thinking, right, that looks really cool. Let me figure out how to do it. And then I flung around a broom and got bullied by a broom. And thought, wow, this is incredibly technical. The key word that comes to my mind, well, 2 words, frustratingly rewarding. Because when you nail it and everything flows, you get the triple extension, you get all the stamp through the floor. And I really fell in love with it that day. And your passion behind it, your willingness to make it fun. Are you willing to share your experience of that course in particular? Because I know we spoke on the phone about adaptability as a coach.
The British weightlifting sort of coaching qualifications, I really enjoy them, but there's a sort of gap between teaching people to do weightlifting and teaching people to coach weightlifting. And like yourself, a lot of people come on the courses having not done much weightlifting, and so you've got to introduce the movement and the language, the positions, teach the activity, and consider developing people as coaches too. So that's really interesting, dichotomy there. I don't think in many other coaching qualifications, people can go on a cycling coaching qualification having never ridden a bike before, or boxing, you probably box for a little bit, or and that's not always what we get with the British weightlifting courses. But I really enjoy the challenge of making people think about how they share information and support and develop others. And the difficult with sport, as a broad sort of brushstroke, is it's all caught up in the technical, tactical, not the sort of psychosocial. And much of what we try and do in Mettle is about the experience and the personal characteristics. We draw out the individual. You guys know your relationships with your clients. But a teacher has really challenging, particularly when we get caught up on technical, tactical. But you need that as a firm base. We're still delivering the weightlifting courses. We've not done a huge amount recently, but through Mettle, we're a British weightlifting local delivery partner. And actually last week, we just ignited our first course in quite a while with Sheffield College. And so we've got a partnership with Sheffield College. I think we've got 10 of their BTEC sports science students becoming weightlifting coaches with a hope to set up a little cluster there, that their students will be coaches for our Mettle cluster at the college.
Wow. Are you seeing that? Have you seen that over the years? Because I think with the rise of some sports, things like CrossFit and some other things that have just played into the fact that Olympic weightlifting now is becoming more popular. Like you said, when you got qualified, you thought you were doing something new. And I'm also very keen to know what the Broadfield used to be like.
Very different.
There was no wins from Dave there, as you said that. But have you seen that? Have you seen this rise in Olympic weightlifting over the years and the popularity and how many people want to try it, and the kids as well thinking, this is something I want to give a go. I don't just want to do deadlifts and bench press. I want to try something a bit more technical.
Yeah, I'm inside the bubble, so I've got a different vantage point. I like the way, by the way, you call CrossFit the CrossFit. I think I think so, yeah.
Did I say the CrossFit?
Yeah,
That's making me sound really old, isn't it? I thought I sounded about 80 there. The CrossFit.
You're doing that very CrossFit. But it's not CrossFit anymore, it's Hydrox, isn't it? Trends are changing, shift, it's fascinating. Weightlifting is a lot more prolific than it used to be, but it's still a minority strength sports. Powerlifting is more accessible. Most people who go to a gym will do some variation of deadlift, bench, and squat. Strongman's got greater profile because of the arenas tours that we now got. But the Christmas tradition of watching strongman on TV, and weightlifting, ironically, in the UK was always a bit fringe and less known. But it's an Olympic sport, and so it gets profile through that. And obviously, Emily Campbell, she's a medal-winning Olympian, and last week she won the European Championships for the 5th time in a row. So we're really quite successful now in part at Olympic weightlifting, and it's grown. The likes of Reebok and Adidas getting on the bandwagon. There's been this sort of shift towards strength, hasn't there? Strong is a new skinny, or whatever catchphrase you want to use. But when the big organisations got on board and started branding strength and profiling it, it sort of opened that door to like the everyday athlete of people training more athletically. And let's be honest, because Nike and Reebok wanted to sell shit to them, but it is also great in the way that strength is profiled, and also the big gyms now are shifting towards the sort of strength-based audience, and most now have bumper plates, decent barbells, weightlifting platforms. I think that's incredible. Really progressive. But I think we're a long way from Olympic weightlifting being a well-known and understood sport. There's not many clubs. Clubs aren't really well utilised, and one of the things Mettle wants to do is to show what's possible and be a weightlifting and strength training club with a club community mentality. Not a gym like many sort of box gyms or commercial gyms are, where 80% of the members pay the money but don't go. So at Mettle, we deliver coach sessions that you book into, and you've got a relationship with your participants and your coach. And the core, the pinnacle of that is weightlifting, but then strong and social and girl strong. I think they're sort of the base and the foundation, probably the bigger ticket items as well.
Do you see maybe a concern that weightlifting is going to be used as a donor sport? And I'm really latching onto that word now. Ever since I heard Lee Bell talk about it, like donor activity or donor sport, I can imagine, similar to gymnastics, similar to Lee mentioned parkour, a donor sport like Olympic weightlifting, that body awareness, strength, joint tendon strength, that sort of stuff, it carries over to so many other sports. I think there's a reason why you might see rugby players they're well into their Olympic lifting because of the carryover, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a concern it's just being used for feeding into other sports, maybe?
No concern at all. I think that's a great thing. You know, strength training, weightlifting is an apex predator sport. Most athletes do it, and any athlete that does it benefits their own personal sport. I don't think there's many sports like that, you know. So if you want to get stronger, you want to become more powerful, weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting is a great tool for that. I think there's an open door there for, you know, athletes or anyone who wants a relationship with a barbell or to build some strength and physical fitness. It's there and available, but it's not for everyone because it's very technical, it's very difficult. You need to hit certain postures and positions, and not everyone can achieve those, and it's uncomfortable. It's also really narrow, you know, weightlifting, snatch, clean, jerk, squat, pretty much. But many athletic programs can start with some power cleans or power snatches as a warm-up, you know? So it's really there and available.
You mentioned the word power a lot there. Do you ever worry that weightlifting's maybe mislabeled, categorized? Maybe that should be powerlifting. I can't help but think the raw power of it.
I think the taxonomy of terms, it's not something to get overly upset or connected to, and you know, we're too far down the road. You can pick up the nuances of what's, you know, power and what's impulse, but it doesn't matter. I mean, let's be honest, most people don't know what weightlifting is. When you say you do weightlifting, you say, oh, is that, you know, bench, deadlift and squat? You say, no, that's powerlifting. But when you show them, most people are familiar with it.
You mentioned maybe kids, like going back to your youth program. What sort of age groups are you looking at getting them into? Like, how early is too early, if there is such a thing?
Well, I'll sort of counter and combat that with a couple of points. That the stereotypes and misconceptions around strength training being bad for you, and bad for children particularly. Well, it's only bad if you're doing it poorly. You know, and that's where a coach who's qualified and experienced comes in. And there's concern over the sort of forces and the forces impact on the body. And it will stunt your growth. But
I've heard that many times. I feel that was the quote of my youth. That I spent so much time in the gym, and dads, friends, everyone was just warning me against it'll stunt your growth. But there just wasn't the research there is today.
There's not. And, you know, the sort of growth misconception, it's the same principle of saying that basketball makes you tall. It's advantageous in weightlifting to be short. You got better levers, you got less distance, you got to lift the bar, and so, you know, a lot of the world champions aren't super tall, or if they are tall, they're significantly muscular. So that's one sort of counterance to the myths and misconceptions. The other thing to consider is, you know, your child is 3 or 4 years old, 5 years old, something like that. Think of the forces acting upon a body if they're jumping off the back of a sofa, which we all know they like to do, you know, landing with a bit of a crash. Well, we've got kids lifting broomsticks, you know, and so the management of force and then the sort of accumulation of load over time is gradual, and the body gets very strong and, you know, it's very safe. So there's an absolute heap of research now. We really well understand the role and the benefit of strength training for young people, not just physically, but, you know, psychosocially as well. There's, you know, improvements in cognition. There's some research suggesting that kids that lift weights and are generally physically active have better attainment in schools, have better social skills. You know, there's research suggesting that students that play sport, and you can put lifting weights into that, go on to earn more within the first 5 to 10 years of their career. Like, incredible, the gift that sport gives us.
There's a glowing review, right? Write that down. Teddy lift weights equals good income.
I just think so much that rings true with the young people I've coached, and their ability to just show a little bit of, what's the right word, discipline in a certain area, when maybe they've got a life of doing what they want and not really being told they can't have this, and a little bit of kind of lack of focus. Something like weightlifting, I think, is just unbelievable for focusing kids, giving them a little bit of purpose. And I guess you could, as I'm saying these things, it doesn't just relate to kids, does it? It relates to everyone. Like, there's so many adults who go through life with this exact same approach of never having something that's galvanised them in a way.
Speaking of elder adults, Dave, sorry to cut you off, what was the word you used for your elder lifters, if you want to call them that?
Old age strengtheners.
Strengtheners. There we go. Love that.
So I'll pick up something about young people, and then I'll jump to the older adults. weightlifting, strength training, it's not got instant gratification to it. Like we're not getting strong for now, we're getting strong for the future. And it hurts, it's difficult, it's uncomfortable. You got to make a sacrifice to, make the time for it. Yeah, okay, you might have a bit of a social hit because you're with your friends, or you might get a bit of a serotonin dump because it does make you feel good to a certain extent, but it's hard. And you're not going to get better without a whole heap of hard work that carries over to the future. And so other stuff is instant gratification, and it's like the question of, what would the long-term Dave do? Or the short-term thinking is, let's fuck it off and have a bag of Skittles and watch some Netflix. But the long-term thinking is you do the graft. What's important, what we try and do at Mettle, is with scaffold social relationships into how people train. We want them to go to training to see their friends and be with their friends. We want them to be at home not wanting to miss training because their friends are there, and also that if they're there working hard and someone chooses to stay at home, they know they're getting better. And so we've got some great little dynamics with little clusters of kids that are friends or at similar levels, and they're working at a bar together, sharing a bar, pushing each other, competing against each other, and everyone's got a rising tide effect because of it. And so there's some thoughts there of what young people can get and benefit from that long-term sort of thinking and commitment to hard work and difficult things. As for the older adults, sarcopenia is the reduction of muscle metabolic tissue, and I don't know if you talked about this much in the podcast before, but it kicks in like ages sort of 35, 40, and if an adult isn't doing a significant amount of resistance, strength and balance based training, they'll lose 1, 2, up to 3% of muscle mass a year, and that's where we ease into frailty. And frailty is like a dangerous thing. If you think of your parents, if they're elderly, or your nan, if you're frail, that's when you lose your balance, you trip, you fall over, you smash your bones up. An elderly adult who breaks a hip is likely to die of a unrelated comorbidity within 5 to 10 years of a sort of hip operation. And that's frailty related, which is absolutely preventable through lifting weights. Or playing other sports, like paddle or tennis or table tennis or bowls or yoga. They all have healthy contributions. But I think weightlifting, strength training is really accessible. Not everyone can go for a jog or play tennis, but anyone can pick up a dumbbell or a resistance band, can't they?
I think there's also I think that sometimes weightlifting is also seen as a little bit singular in its approach. It's the same lift, it's the same movements. And I think sometimes from conversations I've had with people who aren't in the kind of weightlifting strength world, they just think it's boring, for lack of a better term, sometimes. And when I show them my deadlifts or exercises that I'm really proud of, they'll go, "Do you do that every week?" I'm like, "Yeah, every week." Just that? Yeah. And then it kind of starts setting in. Yeah, I am really obsessed with like quite a very singular motion. But what would you say to those people? Try and convince them.
It's not for everyone. Maybe it's not for you. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if you try and tell someone, if you try and persuade someone, you often get the opposite of what you want. But if you point out the benefits or advantages, if you invite someone to sort of give it a go and say, well, it might not be for you, but do you think it could be good for you? Tap into someone's interest of how they'd like to be better, how they like to improve, or secure their health or physicality in the future. But the truth is, it's not for everyone. Sales use a takeaway. This is a great thing, but you're not ready for it yet, and then people tend to sort of jump on it like taking a toy from a baby. Okay. So I'd say that there, and that's okay because you like your deadlifting, and by that person being in the gym with you, it might distract you and disturb you from you enjoying your deadlifting too.
True. Do you think there's do you see any common personality types, at the risk of going to like pseudoscience with this, like weightlifters who do it really well? And I know we spoke about fun earlier and like enjoying himself. We mentioned a mutual friend of ours, Dan Hudson, who's always had views on just come in and enjoy it first.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat dangerous to put people in the boxes or use generalisms. We know that the people who are the best at the things in the world in terms of athleticism or IT or work, there's often some characteristics and traits that are common. You might say that athletes are somewhat narcissistic because they've got to make sacrifices which other people aren't willing to make, personal sacrifices and prioritize their own progression and the goal they're working towards over other things that some other people won't be able to understand. So I think there is a commitment to achievement that some people have to make. But at Mettle and in gyms that you'll go to, there's loads of different types of people doing different activities for different reasons, but they're all under the banner of sort of physical pursuit and training. So yeah, it can be something for everyone. And you said it's quite narrow, and it's your strength work is powerlifting based or weightlifting based, but it can be as broad as you choose. When we look at for kids, physical literacy or having movement competency, we look at the fundamentals. And you want to squat, break, just lunge, push, pull, rotate. But then the fundamental sport movements of kick, catch, throw, run, jump, lift. These are all sort of criteria that you include in all sorts of game-based activities and fashions. Some of our programming at youth level for Mettle for weightlifting is quite narrow because training kids for competition. But our strong and social, we refer to it like a youth club in a gym. In that purpose, actually, our youth coaches are being qualified as youth workers at the moment. We're going through that process because youth work has a whole different offering to the young person and a wider purpose. And I think that's where sport falls down quite a lot. We say sport's great for kids. As a naughty boy, you straighten him out, send him to the boxing gym. Well, that might help him. But yeah, he's probably going to get punched in the face and he might get exposed to a higher level of criminality that he wouldn't otherwise have been involved in. You hear some really good stories, but I think there's some challenges as well of how we throw kids into environments and how we safeguard and develop coaches. And I think those psychosocial skills and those qualities to support kids and develop them and challenge them, I think we can do that better in the way we train and support coaches.
It's really good that you're aware of that, because I think the environment for adults has to be so different to the environment for kids, and having your coaches qualify as youth workers, it is awesome, because like you said, they have different needs and social skills compared to adults, and there's not always a sense of I want to do this all the time. Sometimes they might come to a session and they just want to use that session to socialise, and they're just not in the space to do it. Whereas adults will always go to a session and kind of give you as much as they've got.
Yeah.
Kids won't always do that. They sometimes just want that little bit of a social, knowing that next time, okay, now it's time to kind of learn some stuff and put my foot down.
Yeah, absolutely. An adult will go to work out or play sport with the sort of purpose of competition or betterment, whilst also wanting a nice time. Most adults. Kids want to have fun. The most important thing for a kid playing some sport is having fun, making friends, learning new skills. Those are the three sort of big ticket items. And if a coach of anything can make sure you tick those, kids will enjoy it and keep coming back. But we get that wrong all the time. In terms of youth work, there's a re-emergence of youth work nationally. 14, 15 years of austerity, youth clubs being shut down. Youth work used to be a professional opportunity for people, and it no longer is. So we've lost youth clubs, we've lost youth workers. The professionalisation of youth work is sort of gone. But the new government's bringing that back, and there's some reinvestment. The National Citizen Service has been paused. It's got a £500 million investment annually, and that's probably going to be shifted across to youth work. There's a new youth strategy coming out. It's just been nationally consulted with young people to say what young people want in terms of youth services in their locality. And in Sheffield, I'm part of a group of people that are forming a Sheffield Youth Alliance, part of a steering group, helping coordinate youth provision over the city. We've got 130 organisations signed up. There's sort of 12 or 15 of us leading that as a movement. And it's really important that people say, when you ask them, and it's really topical recently for a number of reasons, but there's not a lot for kids to do. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere safe, or there's not anything accessible. And so they end up getting into all sorts of stuff. So I'm quite excited at the moment for the provision of youth services, for the investment of money, but I also see that's something that sport needs to lean into and learn from.
When you say topical, are you kind of going towards something in particular?
Yeah, we've probably talked about adolescence on the podcast, or all our personal conversations. And what's sat alongside adolescence is obviously the recent death of a young man in Sheffield, but also a publication nationally called the Lost Boys Report, which just highlights some really awful facts and figures around how young men and boys are being let down by society. So there's some stuff that needs shaking up and changing.
It's one thing that I've tried to really zoom out on and take a look at. There's an incredible Instagram page who I've shouted out quite a lot called the Tin Men. and it's a little bit of a play on words about, you know, the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz and what he's lacking, basically. And maybe about how societally young men they are struggling with these role models a little bit. And I'm not going to lie, when my son was born, I did worry a little bit. I'm like, you look inwards and you think, am I good enough? I worry about how many other maybe dads or soon-to-be dads are thinking that way. It hit me for sure. Like, when you say society's maybe let these young men down, do you think there's anything... I appreciate most things are reversible, but anything parents can do to maybe support their young boys?
Yeah, heaps, of course.
Take them to Mettle.
The Tin Man is a really provocative history account. It's very good, but I also look at it with some scrutiny and criticism. It presents a very definite narrative, positively intentional. I think you can step back, and I think to be divisive of separating the needs of girls and boys, or looking at things slightly segregated in terms of gender, there's a lot you can go into, but I think society as a whole perhaps has lost some virtuous thinking. It's the era of sort of post-truth and the era of the sort of self. So yeah, absolutely, the stuff that young men and boys need by way of sort of support and care and understanding and connection, particularly those from disenfranchised communities or broken homes. But I don't think that's never not been the case. However, there's some stuff going on at the moment that's perhaps more prevalent than we've seen in the past. The attainment rates of young boys in school, the transfer from boys from A-levels to university, the achievements of boys in school, and the ability to earn. But isn't this ironic? 'Cause it's only something women have been facing for decades and eons for slightly different reasons. And if anything, women have had to sort of step up and deal with that difficult circumstance of glass ceilings or lack of support or male networks, preventing them from having access. And now, the shoe's on the other foot. So I think it'd just be better for everyone, and provide great experiences that are caring and appropriate and supportive. There's a brilliant organisation in Sheffield called Mums United, and a lady who runs that lived on a estate, and there was a lot of drug dealing, and she set up this organisation to be sort of protective to her children, and effectively a bunch of mums chased the drug dealers off their estate, which is quite a challenge.
Terrifying.
And could have ended really, really badly for them. And Mums United, they're now based in the Wicker, and they've got a great organisation. They've got a boxing gym downstairs, a second-hand shop, real sort of charitable, philanthropic, sort of virtuous offer to the community. Highly proportionally Muslim, but we know people are black and brown skin are often sort of marginalised and live in the more disadvantaged areas of the city, and that's where needs are greatest. One of the things Mums United did is work with a national organisation, the National Race Equity Foundation, something like that, and I attended some training with them, which was for families, for parents, but also children, in sort of two parallel programs. And they had this program for parents to go through to help connect and talk to each other, discuss about how to be good parents, whilst also the kids, young teenagers, had a sort of similar but obviously more suitable session to them. And it's 2 or 3 hours of big chunks of time, and you have these two parallel programs facilitated by community workers, and the parents work together with other parents, the kids work together with other kids, and then you sort of come together occasionally as well. We don't see this much in spaces in society. Where do parents go to facilitate conversations or learn and get support? Other than scrolling through Instagram and saying, did you know, or here's 3 secrets of that. So that really interests me, and maybe in the future that's something we'll deliver in Mettle, or can be involved in other spaces.
Yeah, and I love touching on topics where people just come alive. And when we first sort of reconnected, and I looked at some of the amazing work you were doing from a community basis, I just want to pick up on those 2 words again, virtuous thinking. Like, what do those 2 words mean to you? Because I suppose there might be a lot of people listening or watching thinking, actually, what does virtuous thinking actually mean? Like, what does it mean to you?
So our relationships in life by nature are transactional. We find that people aren't interested in someone else; they're interested in what someone else can do for them, and that's natural, and it's innate, and it's protective, and it's evolutionary. A partnership is what 2 people or 2 organisations can mutually benefit from, but collaboration, I think, is got more sacrifice to it. And so virtuous thinking is perhaps giving a part of yourself away, to benefit someone else, for the benefit of the person in front of you or a group or sort of society, without anything immediately beneficial to yourself. Like if we all behave like that, the world would be a little bit better, wouldn't it? And there's a few points in my life I've sort of looked to think, well, how can I help others or those around me? And I enjoy that, and that's really important for me.
It's really clear that you enjoy that as well.
Yeah.
It really is, like, in everything that you do. When I read a little bit more about you online as well, just doing a little bit of homework for this podcast, the mindful program that you've got, was it
Mindfully Strong?
Mindfully Strong, that's right. When I read that, I just thought, not every gym has that. Not every organisation has that. Not every, it's all, when you get very business minded and you're in the kind of the transactional, monetary transactional business, that becomes everyone's sole focus. And I think people lose like the ethics and the morality around what they do sometimes. And you've obviously very clearly got a very good direction of what you want Mettle to be, and the community aspects, and even getting involved in all these other little communities and projects that you're a part of. It just shows you want to make a difference, I think, to kids and to everyone really. So it does come across that for sure.
Great. I've got a fantastic job at Sheffield Hallam, and I'm really privileged to be on a long leash and to be somewhat trusted. I've been there for a very long time, so you earn that trust. And for me, working at a university with sort of civic ambition that resides in Sheffield and is so sort of big as a power structure, feels appropriate to me that as a staff member who's reasonably well paid, I do something that doesn't just impose the university on the city, that we do good things for Sheffield. Sheffield's been such a great city for me, and it's where I've got my family, my daughter's living, and I want Sheffield to be better. And if I can help that happen, it'll be better for Ina, my daughter, and your kids. So there's a few things going on in that space that I think is really exciting. Sheffield got the city goals. This is a sort of vision of a different future of what Sheffield should be. There's a Yorkshire or a Sheffield Dowerism of what I call BMW driving, bitching, moaning and whining. We spend too much of the time like complaining about the past rather than being positive for the future. And the city goals really sort of reposition that. I mentioned the Youth Alliance that we're working on, and I'm lucky enough through my work to be employed as an embedded researcher with Darnall Wellbeing. Work at the Advanced Wellbeing Research Centre at the Olympic Legacy Park, where Don Valley used to be. That's in the Darnall area. And I've got some time buyout to support people of Darnall and Darnall Wellbeing, and some of the fellowship work that was funded by Westfield Health, looking at the role of support and how it can raise aspirations in young people. That's progressed into me writing a Darnall area youth plan, and writing for Darnall residents and young people, co-produced, about what youth provision could look like for that area, and then put a plan in place of how to bring that to life. And it's so far away from winning medals at Commonwealth Games and training Olympians or professional golfers or whatever. But I still do some of that. I still really enjoy it, but I find it really satisfying. I'll read you, if you don't mind, a purpose statement I wrote.
Absolutely, yeah, we'd love to.
At and about the time of Mindfully Strong. I started some mindfulness several years ago. Just found out I needed sort of a little bit of something just to give me a bit of clarity, and just like you're a young man, you're figuring out personal, families, relationships, work. Like life can be crushing, can't it? And I went on some mindfulness courses that really helped me. And I volunteered for the organisation, the Centre of Mindful-Based Life Enhancement, which is in Sheffield, and trained as a sort of mindfulness coach. And it's what changed some of my training as well. Rather than be the strongest and the aggressive guy in the gym pushing the biggest weights, I found I needed a shift to make training a little bit different for me. And at the same sort of time, I went on this course, and it was around sort of discovering purpose. And this is my personal statement, my purpose statement I wrote in December 2018. And it'll really ring true with a lot of what we talked about. So my purpose, and this continues, is to find happiness and contentment for me, my family, and those around me as best as I can through being positive, future-focused, supportive, caring, and compassionate, and by making a difference through action. I'll read that again. I'll break it down a little bit. So it's to find happiness and contentment for me, my family, and those around me. So happiness is different from contentment. Happiness is that instant. Contentment is a little bit deeper. So I've sort of held both of those there. And then this sort of widening circles of me, those close to me and those far away. And there's a principle of mindfulness, 4 equanimities of you and yourself, your family and those who are close to you, your friends and those who are connected to your network, those who are further, and every sentient being in the world. And these sort of ripples of how we interrelate and our actions impose reactions on those groups. So that's where that comes from. Being positive, future focused, supportive, caring and compassionate. They're my values, if you like. Too many people are bitching and moaning about the past. So I thought, being positive and future focused is something that is important to me. And when I hear others being negative and moaning about the past, I sort of check them, shake them up, and making a difference through action. And I've been in too many meetings. I've talked to a million people that are really passionate and really knowledgeable, but aren't taking the steps to do anything that's going to change the world and make a difference to the thing they're complaining about. So that's my purpose statement. It's a sort of central focus to a lot of what I do.
So many layers to you, Dave, isn't there? So many layers. Fascinating bloke. You don't get many people in your space who are so self-aware and have a very clear idea of what they want and how they can make change and how they can use the resources they have available to impact the future. And I really do agree with that. I think it's just a society we live in, right? And has that changed really much? Probably not in the last God knows how many years, hundreds of years probably, where people are quick to highlight the problems but have no solutions for what needs to change. And you're very proactive on the former there.
Yeah. And what's also constant, it's worth mentioning, is our parents worrying about technology. The rise of AI, it's going to scorch the sun.
Well, we've talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Our parents were probably worried about, our parents' parents were probably worried about microwaves or toasters or the radio or TV, And so there's always this sort of impending doom that the new technology is going to impact. And that's just worth noting as well, isn't it? Because we're at a really interesting stage. Let's not go down the AI rabbit hole. Yeah. Just leave that there.
Yeah, we've been doing that a few times.
We've done a few, haven't we? We've done a few, it gets you thinking. But
let's just pivot a little bit. You've obviously worked with some really big names in sport, Olympics. I first heard your name when I was at university at Sheffield Hallam, and there was a big bloke by the name of Paul Smith, and he was doing ridiculous numbers, and all the lads in the uni gym were talking about him. It's absolute monster. And your name came around as his coach. So you've obviously been, when did you join Sheffield Hallam? 1998, you said? Yeah. So a long time now.
I've been at Sheffield Hallam for longer than I haven't. Last century.
There needs to be some kind of award, surely. There's something on the horizon. But obviously, Paul Smith, countless, people in terms of high-level sport. Is there some kind of similarity, whether it's a training aspect these people carry, a mindset aspect, and maybe a combination of both? Is there traits you see in these really top performing athletes that I'm probably just asking for myself really, that we can adopt in terms of being the best that we can be in our sports?
So to be the best you can be in anything, I think it's a fairly simple equation, but I think it's fairly infrequently that we see it applied. And that's to turn up, to work hard, at the right intensity, consistently and frequently. That's it. Take care of the small things over a long period of time. We overappreciate the things we can achieve in a short space of time and underappreciate the things we can do in a long time span. And so those are the best, are only the best because they've kept at it. And also they've probably been pretty focused. That's what I see, and I think is probably the important point to note. People who work hard relentlessly and are willing to take that step of commitment to do things that others aren't, that will get you something others don't get.
I'm really happy you said that, consistency and just the ability to keep showing up, because I've been a coach for over 10 years now to general population people, and everyone wants the latest pair of shoes. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants the best training program, but really you're looking at 5-10%, and probably not even that, the biggest adaptation and success comes from just working out every time you step in the gym. And sometimes it'll be small, marginal. Sometimes it'll be big jumps forward, but those big jumps don't happen unless you attend all those little small sessions that sometimes you thought were meaningless, but actually there was something about those that just kicked you on 0.01%. And again, it's the quick fix, the instant gratification. It's the I want it now. My history, actually, full disclosure, I never really liked Olympic weightlifting. I still am not a massive fan.
It's not for everyone. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you're not ready for it.
There we go.
Right, that's it. Let us sign up.
Train harder, right?
The only time I've ever tried it is I had a back issue and my physio recommended I do some overhead squatting to try and work on balance and a bit of stability. So I did that religiously for 4 weeks, completely knackered my rotator cuffs because I went into the same attitude, I go into everything. How heavy and strong can I get in the shortest period of time?
To mend a bad back.
To mend a bad yeah. Of course, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do, guys. But I've always been quite into the bodybuilding world. So I remember when I was a kid and I saw like your Kevin Leverones and I saw your Dexter Jacksons, I saw your iconic bodybuilders that I just thought, you're not going to look like that overnight. And that for me was a sense of this is going to take, that these guys are 35 at the time. If I have to spend the next 20 years trying to look like them, I am going to spend the next 20 years. And I've pivoted a little bit since then, as you can tell. I'm no Kevin Leverone. But I think
You're not in a rock band.
Nope. But I think that it's something that I think needs to be highlighted. It's the end goal and it's the consistency of that, and it's having idols as well. I think that's really important for young people, looking up to people who, you know, have what you want and understanding the time frame and the realistic time frame in which it takes to get there. So,
Have you got any idols, Dave? Speaking to piggyback on Ryan's question.
I was thinking as you said that, like, I don't know whether idols for me is the right word, like to put someone up on a pedestal and like look up in that way, but mentors or like peer role models, that brings it a bit closer for me.
I think at this age, yeah, but I think when you're a kid,
Yeah.
you have those people who you just want to put on a pedestal and they can do no wrong.
Who you're sort of inspired by, but then you know you look behind the curtain and
You realise
the
everyone's
reality there
human.
breaks your heart.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think role models are really important. Yeah, we were talking earlier about the difficult situation, young men and boys, and having positive role models is so important there. Particularly when you're looking at the situation of young boys and some young girls being attracted to criminal activities or negative things in their life. That's got such a strong magnetism. If you've not got a lot to do and someone's going to buy you 2-piece and chips and give you £500 for taking a bag somewhere, you're going to need a strong magnet that's going to pull you away from that. And role models and positive influences are really important there. Whether that's sort of celebrity or whether that's just your youth worker or your coach, and that to me is something I see as important for my role in the members at Mettle and also the coaches that I'm developing and supporting. You mentioned a bit about that sort of consistency of hard work and commitment to keep showing up. And we know that motivation is like the weather. Motivation peaks and troughs. Highly motivated the first week of January. Second week of August, not so much unless you got a holiday around the corner. But that's where the difference between motivation and commitment sort of lies. And it's when your motivation is low, your commitment kicks in. But what scaffolds around that is culture and behaviours and peer connection. So when you're not motivated, when you don't feel great, that's when you're a role model or a positive peer. That support does help you stay on the right path. You'll know that from your roles as trainers or the environments you've been in that keep you going back.
I think what's amazing about that is there is a lot of beauty in simplicity, and a lot of what you said so far, I think a lot of people know, but it's the unwillingness to do what we know we should do, which mesmerizes me, because everyone can get in their own head maybe, or they can come up with not so much excuses, sometimes validations of, well, I can't do that because of this, and that can maybe relate to values. If I can quickly go back to the values that you mentioned from your purpose statement earlier, where did you decide, or how did you decide on those words from the values?
So the way in which you develop your own personal values is fairly straightforward. You think about what's important to you, and you look at a long list of values of 50 or 60 sort of appropriate terms. Check out Google, and you'll get a list of these, and you sort of circle what's important to you. Things will jump out. Things will shine a bit brighter than others, and stuff will connect with you. So actually in the Masters Strength and Conditioning Coaching Masters at Sheffield Hallam, the sessions I take are so far away from reps and sets and close to the stuff I'm talking about. And we do a values exercise. We write a personal mission statement, and we do a sort of purpose exercise and looking forward at 5, 10, 30 years time to help sort of map out what's important to us. And in terms of values, it's putting a list of 15, 20 together, seeing what are similar, and then deciding what's the most appropriate, and then chopping a few down. But the important thing is when you've got a number of key terms, values of 3, 4, 5, 6, is really looking to see what the behaviours associated with those are, and what the near-reaching and far-reaching enemies are, what's the opposite, because that's really important too. And on the Masters, in the values session, we will have a sort of defining statement for each one of what living those values will look like, feel like, and result in. So that's what really brings just a value set to life. I had an interview once with the IS, and I mentioned my values in the interview, and the interviewer, Tommy Ewell, what are your values? Expecting to catch me out. And I said, they're on my CV. And he looked down, and like the shock on his face. And as he looked down, I sort of read them out because I knew what they were. He really wasn't expecting that. But it's only simple set up steps in it to do something that is perhaps exceptional, just because a lot of other people don't do it.
Have you tried it in the past? The value, like what Dave said, the big list of words, and then seeing what jumps out.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've had some really fascinating people I've coached, and you do when you coach Gen Pop people, even attending Mettle, you have some fascinating conversations with people. I mean, you've worked in university for 20 odd years now, right? So it's going to be at a point now where you've just met so many different people in different walks of life, and I'm the same. Like you get very introspective people you talk to make you think internally a little bit, and you can tell that's just who they are. And we've had conversations even in sessions where I'm like, they're paying me for this session, but I feel like I'm actually getting a lot from this. And I've gone away, I've thought about kind of what is important to me. And to be honest with you, before I had a family, there wasn't much. I feel like, and you may have felt the same, but family gave me a lot of purpose. It made me realise what I really want in life, and I don't think I really knew until I had a kid.
I think I'm really impressed by those people who can balance those plates and still really stay true to their values, not get caught up in the race, and do what's best for the family. And I mean, to bring your daughter up, who we were speaking about earlier, Nina, she's 6 now. Is that right?
Yeah.
What sort of world would you like Nina to grow up in?
A better one. I think, you're absolutely right that having a child is a leveler, and suddenly the whole world that's in front of you, there's someone else that's more important than you for the activities and the things you want to spend your time doing. Although when my wife gave birth, it was 6:30 in the morning at the Jessup Swing. And there was a Mettle session at 9:30 in the morning, and you can see the gym from the hospital. And I just said, "I can see you doing all right? Everything all right? Yeah? Might just go down and open the gym. Is that all right?" Which is really interesting reflection on my commitment to Mettle and the members, but also understanding that Nina was safe, Bex was good. I had to do a run to a shop to get some clothes because Nina was much smaller than we'd sort of prepared for, and so we needed some different provisions. So I'd sort of wrapped it into that. But I did go and open the gym, and I let the parents and the kids in. And,
have you ever told her this, or she about to find out for the first time?
She knows that. It was an acknowledgement that I shared with her before I went, not a secret. But I opened the gym, and I was like, "I've got an announcement, guys. I'm a dad as of about 3 hours ago." What are you doing here? So I'm going to go back. Are you okay just to supervise the session for me? Be safe, have fun. So I didn't like the idea of people being locked out of the gym and in the car park wondering where Dave was and let him down. So
I've just got this vision of you at the window, like one eye on the gym, one eye on your missus. That's dangerous. Like you can see it from the window.
Some universal cues there, I'm sure, if you shout push.
yeah, for sure.
Brace.
But being a dad's brilliant. Nina's 6. It gives you focus. We talked about purpose, and I think the only things we can do as parents is trying to provide a better environment and a better experience for your child than you had. My parents were brilliant. I had a great upbringing. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Devon. I had 2 parents that really sort of cared for me. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed. And so I've got a great base, and on that base I want to build a better future for Nina. I really like the sort of commitment and sacrifice, the sort of rhyme and rhythm that I've got as a dad, but also as a husband. When we got married, we decided very much how some things in our life needed a change, or what we wanted on a regular routine. And so, some of the things we've got in place are making sure we have scheduled time for us. Bex, my wife, and I are both very busy. We've got a lot of competing priorities, but we do work hard together to make sure we get downtime, time together. Little things like clearing weekends every quarter, making sure you get a holiday, making sure I have some time together or time as a family. And being a dad, you start to realise the value of bank holidays. And I love the way that now, I don't know whether you guys are there yet, but Nina's at school, so we've got school holidays. This periodises my life. So every 6 to 8 weeks, we've got a half term or a holiday. And actually, I really enjoy that sort of chunk and that focus. I've always worked in 100 days, sort of 3-month chunks to sort of prepare and plan and deliver and review. But now it sort of changed the rhythm.
Well, my missus is a teacher, so I've always kind of worked on that basis. But they do. They're quite a nice equaliser, aren't they? And when they've got time off, you always want time off yourself because they're going to be around and they're free. And
so it's our commitment, and I'm sure you're the same. I enjoy it when my friends get pregnant, because you can't tell anyone, can you? And then the phrase I use is an F-bomb here, and it's congratulations on fucking your life up in the best way possible. And it sums it up for me, because everything changes. But I'm still carrying on a great career at Sheffield Hallam. Mettle's going full guns and going good places. We've got a growth plan at the moment that we're really excited for, and love being a dad and a husband and taking care of Nina. We swim on a Monday night. We have some after school clubs. She does judo, she does athletics, do tennis. We've got loads of activities.
Does not surprise me one bit that.
All the things that I go and I get stuck into. They're some of my favourite times of the week, and also some of the times where I know that if Bex is going, I get some downtime, or if Bex is needs a bit of time out, I'll take Nina, or we go together. Thursday night at the EIS, watching Nina learn athletics and run and sprint and jump and throw. But me and Bex are having a coffee, sat together. These are brilliant times.
I've got quite a selfish question, Dave, if that's all right. I'm going through the process at the moment of trying to introduce my little boy Ted to just as many sports as I can. Just let him see it, see if he asks about them again. He's asked about climbing, rugby again, and I'm like, oh, all right, let's introduce it. Stuff that maybe, I suppose my upbringing was very singular in the form of football, martial arts. That's it. And I don't blame my parents for that. It's just what was available at the time, I suppose. But how was that process, just putting the feelers out for introducing Nina to different things?
There's an acronym, and it's GAS: gymnastics, athletics, and swimming. These are 3 sort of core activities, but if you had a racket sport in the mix, you got a pretty good base. My sort of advice to you would be to explore and do lots of different things and enjoy that process, and enjoy taking your son to new and different environments and throwing them in, watching them bounce and get upset, or figure it out, be the best, be the worst, have a good time, have a bad experience, and lots of variation is really important. I think if you boil down too quickly to one key focus, and football is an absolute killer for boys with this. I know so many parents and young boys particularly that they just want to play football, and kids need a varied and a significantly broad experience to try lots of things. I think athletics is excellent. The sessions at Everyone Active Run at the EIS are brilliant. They've got some good athletic sessions at some of the clubs in Sheffield. For me, judo as martial art is excellent for a couple of reasons. Judo, when you do randori is proper fighting. You have a lot of karate or Thai boxing. You punch in the air, you kick in the air. There's a lot of programs that are very much financially focused, and judo's got a little bit more sort of traditions and origin. So we've got a great judo coach. He's had a couple of judo fights that I really enjoyed. So yeah, judo's a brilliant sport, as is a wide base of martial arts, so long as you've got a good environment and a good instructor. It's not a journey to, the dog agrees. Not a journey to black belt, in a sort of accelerated commercial basis. Nina's learning to swim, because I think that's really important. I don't necessarily want her to be a swimmer, which is a lot of early mornings and a lot of high volume, black line wall. But if you ask Nina why she's learning to swim, it's because she wants to dive. I work with Sheffield Diving Squad. They're a brilliant club, and a wicked sort of family orientated club. So I think in a few months, when she's a little bit better at swimming, we'll take her to diving. She's going to start with lifting weights in the next year or two as well. But we're taking time for that, because she's only 6. You need them to have a right sort of mature outlook and ability to focus and concentrate on a specific task. But in the future, that's where Mettle Minis comes in, which will be a lot more play based.
Does that help? Can you overtrain as a 6-year-old? Maybe. Nina sounds like she's close.
More researchly, please. More researchly, well.
What did you take from that, by the way? What made you think about what you're going to do with your boy?
Letting him bounce off things. Just immerse yourself, try it. And it's very much the philosophy we've taken so far, about just letting him experience the environment, like seeing him watch a full contact rugby game. And my client Sam, shout out to him, because he was just unbelievable. He just seeing the rough and tumble, seeing the skills that he's, not even skills that he's developing now, just his tendencies about he wants to wrestle and he wants to jump off things back of the sofa. And being like, did you know you can do this with other people? And showing him that you can make cool friends here and you can meet some cool people. So absolutely that. And when we spoke on the phone, Dave, about what would maybe like this podcast to be in terms of topic and that sort of stuff, a topic that I raised, and I think you mutually agreed with, was being a sporting parent, because you are well on your way to being a sporting parent. Sounds like you're fully immersed. You mentioned football there. That's some of my horror stories from seeing parents get too involved. Have you had many good, bad experiences? Anything that parents listening can be like, okay, Dave says, be this sort of sporting parent?
There's loads of ways that you can try to do the right thing and end up doing the wrong thing. And so it's important, I think, just to be considered and mindful and sensible. Spark plug theory. Spark plug works when it's the right distance away. If it's too close or too far away, the engine doesn't fire. And that's probably the same advice I give to parents. Be there, be supportive, be encouraging. Praise hard work and effort, not outcome. Help them pay attention to detail and process. Don't coach them. You're not the coach. Sit alongside them and celebrate and support them. But also react to their needs. If a child's deciding or unsure that an activity is for them, don't pressure them and let them perhaps explore something else or have a week or two off. And they might enjoy that break and then go back or choose not to. So there's a few things there. Something we talked about earlier that we sort of touched on is how to be a good parent. If you're thinking on how to be a good parent, the chances are you will be, and it's those that don't even consider what good parenting looks like that are going to trip up.
I agree. I think if you're considering your parenting style, you're already better than probably most parents out there who would just assume that you have your kid, you do your thing. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of their own parenting style and how it's inherited essentially from your own parents and your coaches and your role models in life and people that have influenced you. I get it when I coach. Sometimes I'll say something to a client and I'm like, my football manager used to say that 15 years ago, and I've adopted these styles, and it's subconscious to us. It's the way we took on information and we're influenced, and we want to do the same with the people that we coach.
It's still in there. That's deep in it from 15, 20 years ago.
God, yeah.
I think our job as maturing adults, as adolescents, is to break free of the hypnosis that our parents placed upon us. They present a certain worldview and a certain learned behaviour. There's a growing concern with ADHD at the moment, and the diagnosis and the sort of lag time for diagnosis and sort of medication and all this. it's almost like ADHD and autism. That's going to be neurotypical soon if the rates continue to rise. But I think you get a lot of modelling. You get a lot of parent sort of copying, of kids who just are similar to their parents. So we got a responsibility there, haven't we, for how we behave and what we do and what our children take on.
I think when I became a dad, I also got very introspective in terms of what the traits I'd like her to have and what the traits I really don't want her to have. Yeah. And I actually look very deep and go, are there things that need to change? And hand on heart, there was some stuff for sure. I was like, right, I need to kind of address X, Y, and Z and make sure that this is better. And that was probably a little bit of a barrier for me even having kids in the first place. I didn't think I was ready. I thought I was a bit too immature. I thought there were some areas that I didn't like about myself that I was worried that I might pass on. But you also realise as well, you've got quite a while to sort those things out. You've got quite a good few years, like even at 2, she's copying and saying what we say, but we'll slip up with the occasional swear word. But she's not yet cottoned onto that. So you realise that she's taking things in, but not everything. I hope not everything anyway. But it's a never-ending journey of just, making sure you influence them in the right way.
I've got a little story, which I probably didn't intend on sharing, but after seeing Dave read his purpose statement, I'd love to be honest. So my question to you, Dave, we're going to be about flaws, about sharing flaws and sharing setbacks with your child. A couple of weeks ago, I had a huge, mental, I'm going to call it a mental blip, where there's, for numerous reasons, I had to rule some things out and think, is it this, is it that? And Teddy saw me at a bit of a low ebb, and I didn't really know how to address it because I was just going to take myself off and disappear. But he followed me around and he was like, "Are you okay?" And it was really sweet to sort of hear him say, "Are you okay?" And for me to actually say, "No, actually, son, I'm struggling a little bit." And he's like, "Why? What's the matter?" And in my head, I thought, how much is too much to overshare here? How much do I tell him what's going on? And I think for him to see that his dad was not all right all the time, I thought, actually, that could be the best thing that I could do for him, to be like, this is normalising it to a degree. I don't know your thoughts on sharing your flaws or struggles with Nina, maybe.
Well, it's human, isn't it? To have good and bad days and to have a range of emotions. And it's also human to be caring. And what you saw with your son is he's got that sense of caring, which he's going to get from you. It's okay to be not okay. Dad is not feeling great at the moment. Something difficult happened at work, or I'm just feeling a bit sad today. That's the world. And I think that's brilliant that A, you can share that with your child, and B, they can understand that's normal and all right, and see that they can react to that.
There was that hesitancy there, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you've had any similar experiences with Nina where maybe she's seen you a little bit stressed out, and you're like, actually, I just need a minute.
Yeah, of course. The person we wish we were, or the Instagram or the Facebook profile that we present, that's not the reality. There's so much more in there, and behind the curtain is when you're at home, and that's where your child will see you, and they will be super aware, even if you try and not to reveal certain aspects of how you're feeling, or your relationship with your wife, or whatever's going on. They'll be switched onto it, and that's also their normal. So we can only do what we can do. I think on that, for me, it's a matter of being truthful and reflective, and I love sort of the fact that Nina's now old enough to walk down the road hand in hand, chatting and having a proper conversation. And she's got thoughts of her own and vocabulary to present it, and she'll understand. She asked me the other day, "Daddy, how do people get rich?" I was like, "Whoa, okay." So we had a conversation about wealth and inequality and earning money and hard work and things outside of monetary value that make the world good. And she got it.
Brilliant.
What a brilliant conveation that was. A 6-year-old.
That is the coolest part, isn't it? When they actually start this little alien thing that was, in Jessup's wing, suddenly starts growing, and now it's talking back to you, it's telling you how it's feeling, and then it's having quite deep conversations with you and interesting, going down interesting tangents. But I love that. Even at 2.5, she's just amazing me with what she says and how she's picking things up, and the brains are like sponges, aren't they, for learning and wanting to know things, and sometimes wanting to know a bit too much. You don't need to know about that just yet.
No.
But Is there anything there was something I wanted to ask actually, as you were talking about Nina and all the things she's done? Is there any resistance you've had to certain sports where she's let you know that I'm not down for that, whether it is the weightlifting or something else?
Not yet.
No.
There's things that we've done less of or stopped doing. We went to a gymnastics class for a while, and she really enjoyed it and had fun, but she wasn't massively like enjoying the gymnastics. It was pissing around with a bunch of kids and having fun with sort of friends, and we felt we could use that time better. I was left bothered by the fact that she wasn't progressing. Swimming as well at the moment, she's not getting massively better all the time. My wife's quite sort of competitive and wants her to really be improving and succeeding and being like better than the other kids, which we're all interested in, of course. But I can see the gymnastics and the swimming still. Nina just enjoys it. She's having a good time, and that's enough for me. So we have removed her for some activities. The other thing I think is worth mentioning is about the breadth of activities outside sport. And you asked about what sporting choices we can make, but I've got a waiting list for like a wood folk craft activity, which is fully subscribed. It's completely off my sort of radar because we're sporting dads.
Right.
But there's other spaces, places, other things. There's a brilliant theatre in town in the mall called Utopia Theatre. It's an African heritage theatre. We'll go there a couple of times a year. If there's something on, we'll go there. And we'll be pretty much the only white people in the room and see different heritage, different cultures, different activities. And Nina goes there and feels comfortable and fits in. And
awesome.
She's okay with that. I've got an event tomorrow early evening that I'm going to around SYNC, South Yorkshire Neighbourhood and Community Project, which is a sort of youth work project around country lines and county lines and trafficking and violence reduction in young people. But there's a sort of celebration activity. Nina's coming to that with me, so I take her to things. We went to a Roma Slovak dance festival, and she ate a load of cabbage and rice wrap rolls and lay on the floor while three sort of Slovak women danced to this music she'd never heard of before. So I think that the tapestry of activities and the exposure to different things, we should enable our kids to be normal. I think that's really worth considering.
I think it's been curious as well. I love that word for that reason. It's just showing them that actually to be a diverse human, go and experience these things. Yeah. I found that from martial arts as a kid. I did Goju-ryu, which is a style of karate, and the literal translation is hard, soft, and it's like knowing when to be, hard exterior, do something tough, and then the next minute when to back off and be soft. And you learn a lot from that, and to the point where I'm obsessed with languages and words, and to the point where we'll try and teach Ted how to communicate when we're on holiday. If you're in Greece, say Calimera. If you're in Spain, speak Spanish where you can, and just teaching him there is a different word.
You're looking for a word, then, were you?
Buenos dias, I'm glad that slipped me. But it's just teaching him that, and I love that.
It all comes back to, again, I think, embracing these cultures. I think some of the best rounded people that I know are the people who have done quite a lot of travelling. They've been to different places. They're very cognizant of how good we've got it over here, and again, it maybe comes back to a little bit of it's parent-led. Certain parents' beliefs and ideologies around whether it is ethnicities, races, integrating. A lot of that can be passed down, and it all starts from that early age. And Sheffield's a great city for that, though, right? Just the amount of communities and different, people you can meet from different backgrounds in this city is as big as it gets, I think, in terms of UK cities, for sure.
100%. Dave, honestly, I think you've been amazingly generous with your time so far. I do appreciate it.
No idea how long we're doing.
No, sorry. Shall we ask us final sort of questions for Dave so we can kick on with the busy day that I'm sure you've got lined up, Dave? One of my sort of final questions were going to be about the future you mentioned Mettle's growth plan and that moving forward. How does that look for the next couple of years?
So I'm 45, 46 next month. Arguably, the sort of midlife of our age span, and I'm really looking forward to the trajectory that I've got. I remember turning 40 and looking back to the previous decade, going, "Yeah, we're doing okay," and I'm looking forward to turning 50 and looking back and going, "We're on a good path." So my job at Sheffield Hallam, I really enjoy. I'm on a PhD by publication path. So Liebel did a more traditional formal publication PhD process. I've got something a little bit different and less traditional. And the way I'm integrating my career at Sheffield Hallam, doing some of the community-facing work and some of the development work I've talked about, and Mettle is sort of overlapping those in a series of publications. To be a better academic, got to learn to sit still, be quiet, read more and write more. But that's part of my characteristics and the necessities of being a good academic. But part of the reason that's important to me is I think that I'm doing some great stuff and I want to share it. I want to broadcast that, and I want to present what I'm doing, and hopefully, like we're doing now, inspire others. So for the next 5 years, I've got to focus on getting my doctorate through a sort of varied PhD by publication path, and also presenting some of that work at conferences and sharing that, overlapping that with the growth and development of Mettle. So some of those papers will be documenting and writing up, presenting the work we do at Mettle. We got some really good strands. We got Strong and Social for ADHD children. We've got an obesity-focused program, which's got a little bit of funding to work with kids who are living with obesity. We've got some work with some female refugees. So all of these, I think, have got really significant value of bringing things to action and practice, as with my values and philosophy, and then presenting those. So that's next, and then balancing off and complementing the two sort of entities of profession that I've got, Mettle and Sheffield Hallam, in a sort of synergistic way to make sure they work well. So that's the sort of next steps. The Mettle growth plan is to be in more places, delivering more programs to more people. We've got some partnerships developing with some primary schools, some secondary schools and a college. And a sort of medium-term plan for Mettle is to deliver our Mettle matrix in several different venues. Looking for 5 secondary schools in Sheffield and having an inter-schools weightlifting championships every year. Delivering Strong and Social and Girls Strong in schools, but not just for the pupils, but also for the staff and the community. Can we have a gym in a school? Let's be honest, most schools' gyms are pretty poor and pretty poorly utilised. Can we develop a gym in a school and make it Mettle branded and profitable and have a profit share with the school? And if we can do that, can we do that in several places? If we can do that in Sheffield, can we do that in the Mayoral Combined Authority through Rotherham, Barnsley and Doncaster? So that's the next year, 10-year journey, I think, to document and publish what we're doing, to understand that more, to present it about the social impact, and work the business model up, and then to drag and drop and locate that in lots of places. And that's the way I think we'll have big positive change on lots of lives through picking up a dumbbell and a barbell in a sort of social context. So that's the plan. Let's see if that's possible. But we'll enjoy the journey along the way. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Really enjoyed the conversation, and learning a bit about you guys.
Yeah. I love that ethos. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. I think I'm already bought into the idea of having schools on board, and almost having you have football tournaments between schools, having the weightlifting side of things as a big part of what kids want to do. One final question for me, if that's all right. If you were to go back to the 18-year-old Dave right now, what would be one piece of advice you'd give him?
One piece of advice for the 18-year-old Dave. And keep going, believe in yourself, and be less socially distracted. 18-year-old Dave, playing rugby, drinking loads of booze. It's an era where we didn't have the digital distraction. But I always had my head on my shoulders and always had a sort of 5-year intention. But I think I've burnt a lot of time socially. But then, maybe that's forged some of the skills that I rely on and I lean on now. Perhaps be a little less socially distracted.
Less
carve your own path. Less booze.
Less, Dave.
Big shout. I think something kids these days are following in a positive vein, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And I don't know about you, Ryan, I feel really lucky to have had this conversation with Dave today.
Absolutely, yeah. To pick your brains and to have a man who just, you speak to coaches and you realise that certain guys just get it, and you're an absolute beacon for coaches who want to learn and be the best they can be. And I think that our parents' audience will take loads from this. I definitely, as a parent, took loads from this for sure. Yeah,
Where could people find more about Mettle or about yourself if they want to reach out and say hello?
Yeah, thanks, chaps. Well, yeah, it's been a good conversation, and what you do is great. You know, you're providing a platform and letting people present their ideas or interests and sharing them with others, which is so important. You know, and a focus, you know, for a lot of people from Sheffield. Yeah, so you in turn are making Sheffield better by giving Sheffield people a platform to sort of share some of the great things that happens here and connects. If people want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Mettle obviously has got a social media, you know, aspect, so you'll find Mettle, Mettle. It's worth pointing out. So that sort of psychological resilience and fortitude. You know, there's a slight irony there. It's not the metal that we associate Sheffield with, and that's very purposefully done. So yeah, look for mettle.zone is our web domain. Mettle Communities on Insta, or Dave Hembrough. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn or Insta. Look forward to hearing from your audience and seeing any sort of comments or reflections that our conversation elicits.
Dave,
Incredible.
thank you today. Awesome. Thank you.
Man.
Great
Thank you,
conversation.
Dave. Very grateful, mate. Thank you.
Guys, thank you for joining us on the Fit Dads podcast. We'll see you next one.
See you soon.
Megan, awesome.
Thank you.
Honestly,
Enjoyed
really
that.
good.
Yeah.
Really good. Thank you. Thank you.